Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to plunge into fascinating topics, really pull out the most compelling insights for you.
That's right.
And today, we are definitely unspooling a cool one, the world of vintage band tees and those retro 80s mixtape shirts.
Mm-hmm. A personal favorite.
Yeah, me too. So we've looked at sources like vintage band tees and retro 80s mixtape shirts. Rock your music band style. And we're going to try and figure out why these things are so much more than, just fabric.
Right. How to find them, how to look after them.
Exactly. And what makes them, like actual pieces of wearable art. So get ready to rock your understanding of retro style.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. When you see a real vintage band tee or like one of those 80s shirts,
Yeah.
there's this immediate gut reaction.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's not just clothes, is it? It feels like it, transports you somewhere else. But what is it beyond just, oh, that's old? What makes them hit so hard?
Well, I think what's really fascinating is that they're not just fashion items. They're more like cultural timestamps.
Cultural timestamps.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. They don't just remind you of a time. They embody the spirit, the maybe rebellious vibe or the whole look of that era. Something modern copies rarely capture quite the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Like Marcus Thompson, he collects vintage stuff. He puts it really well. He says, a vintage band tee isn't just clothing. It's a piece of rock and roll history you can wear.
Wow.
Yeah. And he talks about his original 1982 Iron Maiden shirt. Mm-hmm. Says he's not just wearing fabric, he's wearing the energy of the concert, the memories.
That's powerful. Wearing the energy. Okay, so that makes sense. But the 80s specifically, compared to other decades, what made that time so potent for these shirts? Yeah. Why did that cultural explosion get captured so well on cotton?
Well, the 80s, it was just this massive cultural shift, wasn't it? You had MTV launching, personal computers starting to show up.
Right, everything changed.
And the music scene just exploded, all these new genres popping up. And the shirts from back then, they just soak up that energy. The graphics are so bold, lots of neon.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, the neon.
Yeah. And sometimes they've got this slightly rebellious feel, too, which actually brings up those cassette tape shirts. They seem, especially significant somehow.
Oh, totally. And speaking of that personal feel, the mixtape shirt, that's not just a retro picture, is it?
No, it's more.
It's like it represents that whole ritual, how personal music sharing used to be before, Spotify just served it up.
Right. Curating that tape took time, effort.
Yeah, you were carefully choosing every track, making the cover. It was like sharing a little piece of your soul, basically.
Exactly. And that feeling, that connection to a specific time, that sense of living history, it immediately makes you wonder, right, if you want to get into this, how do you even tell what's real? How do you spot the genuine article from, a really good modern fake?
Exactly, because there are good fakes out there now.
Yeah.
So, okay, if you're out there wanting to build a collection, what are the absolute must-checks? Where do you even start looking on the shirt itself?
Right. Well, it really kind of boils down to three main things. First, how it's actually made, the construction.
Okay, construction.
Yeah. Then the labels and tags, obviously, crucial. Mm-hmm. And then the graphics themselves, the print.
Got it. So construction.
Yeah.
What are we looking for there?
Okay, so for construction details, the big one is single stitch. Look at the sleeves and the bottom hem. If you see just one line of stitching,
single stitch.
That was pretty standard before the mid-90s, roughly. Yeah. If you see two lines, double stitched, that often means it's newer. Could be reproduction.
Good tip. Double stitch equals newer, usually.
Usually. And also the feel of the fabric. A lot of authentic vintage tees were made from heavier cotton blends. They just feel more substantial sometimes.
Right, okay. And tags, you said tags are crucial.
Oh, yeah. Tags are fingerprints, basically. You want to look for those classic brands from the 80s, early 90s, like Screen Stars, Hanes, Fruit of the Loom, maybe Anvil.
Screen Stars, I remember those.
Yeah. And often you'll see Made in USA on tags from the 80s. Jennifer Rodriguez, she authenticates vintage clothes. She said, the tag is like a fingerprint. Once you know what authentic 80s labels look like, you can spot fakes from across the room.
Across the room. Okay, so know your tags. What about the print itself, the graphics?
So with the graphics and the printing, authentic vintage screen printing, it's going to look, Old. Naturally aged.
Right. Not artificially distressed.
Exactly. Look for, like, slight cracking in the ink, genuine fading that looks organic, not too perfect, and really important, the graphic should feel like it's part of the fabric, kind of sunk in, not just sitting stiffly on top.
Okay. Sunk into the fabric.
Yeah. And always check for copyright dates on the print if there are any. They should match up with the tour dates or the album release year, that kind of thing.
That's super helpful. Okay, so now you've got this checklist. You know what you're looking for. Where do you actually go hunting? Because I swear all I find in my local thrift shop are, like, corporate picnic tees from 2003.
Huh. Yeah, tell me about it. You're not alone there. I mean, thrift stores, flea markets, estate sales, they are still the prime spots, especially if you're hoping for those cheap vintage band tees.
Right. The dream find.
But yeah, it absolutely takes patience and just consistent searching. You got to keep going back. I mean, I looked out once, found an original 83 U2 War Tour shirt for $5.
No way. $5.
$5. And now it's worth like over $200. So the treasure is out there.
Okay, you're giving me hope.
Huh. But yeah, beyond that, online, of course, marketplaces like eBay, Etsy, they have just vast selections.
Right.
But you have to be careful.
How so?
Ask for really detailed photos, close-ups of the tag, the stitching, the print, get measurements, because vintage sizing is all over the place. And, check the seller's reputation. Try to verify authenticity as much as you can before buying.
Makes sense. Pay a bit more for certainty sometimes.
Exactly. For guaranteed authenticity, there are specialized vintage retailers. They curate collections. You'll pay more, definitely, but you get that peace of mind.
Right. Okay, so let's say you found one, you struck gold, maybe that U2 shirt. How do you keep it looking amazing? How do you protect that investment or just, the history?
Yeah, proper care is just non-negotiable. It's essential for preserving the value, sure, but also just keeping it wearable for longer.
So washing, what's the rule?
Okay, washing. Always cold water.
Cold, got it.
And use the gentlest cycle your machine has. Turn the shirt inside out first. That really helps protect the graphic.
Inside out, gentle cycle, cold water. Okay.
And avoid harsh detergents. Definitely no bleach ever. A lot of serious collectors, they actually hand wash their most valuable pieces just to be extra safe.
Hand wash.
Yep.
And drying. Please don't say hang dry.
Well, air drying really is the best. Lay it flat or hang it carefully. Putting it in a hot dryer is basically the fastest way to cause shrinkage and crack the print. So yeah, avoid the dryer if you can.
Okay, air dry it is. For the really special ones, at least. And storage. Just fold them up.
Best practice is to store them in a cool, dry place, away from direct sunlight, because that causes fading. Using cedar blocks can help keep moths away. And for really delicate or valuable ones, some people use acid-free tissue paper to help maintain the shape when folded.
Acid-free tissue. Wow.
Yeah, like David Chen, he's a vintage clothing conservator. He says he treats his vintage tees like the art pieces they are. He says proper care isn't just about value, it's about respecting the history and the craftsmanship.
That makes total sense. Treating them like art.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we know what they are, how to spot them, find them, care for them. But how do you actually wear them? How do you style these historical artifacts so they look, cool today and not like you just stepped out of a time machine?
That's the fun part. And honestly, the beauty of these vintage band tees is they are incredibly versatile. Surprisingly so.
Okay, how?
Well, for just a straight-up casual, cool look, you can't go wrong pairing them with something like wide-leg jeans and some simple white sneakers.
Class.
Or layer it, throw a denim jacket over it, or an open flannel shirt. Easy.
Right, the standard cool look.
Yeah. But you can also do elevated casual. This is where it gets interesting. Tuck the tee into some sharp, tailored trousers, add a blazer. Suddenly, it's this really contemporary, fashion-forward outfit that mixes old and new.
Blazer over a band tee. I like that. Kind of unexpected.
Totally. Like Ashley Kay, she's a fashion blogger. She apparently loves wearing her vintage blondie tee with like a pleated midi skirt and ankle boots. She calls it the perfect mix of edgy and feminine.
Ooh, okay. Skirt and a band tee. Nice.
And then there's a layering mastery. These tees are amazing layering pieces. Think about wearing one under a slip dress.
Under a dress, okay.
Yeah, or over a long sleeve shirt for a kind of 90s grunge feel. Or even just tied at the waist over a simple sundress in the summer. Lots of possibilities.
Wow, okay, more versatile than I thought. What about sizing, though? You mentioned it's tricky.
Huge point. Vintage sizing can be completely different from modern sizing. A vintage large might fit like a modern small sometimes. So always check the actual measurements, pit to pit, length. Don't just rely on the size tag.
Right. Ignore the tag, measure the shirt.
Exactly. And also, don't be afraid to look across sections. Check out men's vintage 80s shirts, even if you usually shop women's and vice versa.
Yeah.
A lot of these older tees have a great unisex fit anyway.
Good tip. Okay, so beyond just looking awesome.
Yep.
Is there really an investment side to this? Are we talking about these things actually gaining serious value? Or is it more just, a fun collectible hobby?
Well, look, it's not like buying stocks, right? Fashion isn't usually a primary investment strategy, but real vintage band tees, especially the rarer ones, have definitely shown some pretty impressive appreciation in value. We're talking original tour shirts from the huge bands Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones.
The icons.
Yeah, those can sell for thousands of dollars. Sometimes for really iconic, super rare ones in great condition.
Yeah.
Even tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands for a t-shirt.
Yep. Like, there was an original 1978 Rolling Stones Some Girls tour tee that fetched over 10 grand. It happened.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just the huge classic rock bands.
No, not at all. Even, 80s new wave bands, Duran, Wham, or specific rare punk stuff like Black Flag shirts, those are highly collectible now, too.
Duran.
Yeah.
Okay. What drives the price up so much?
It's a combination of factors, really. Obviously, the band's lasting popularity is key, how rare that specific shirt is. Maybe it was only sold at a few shows. Condition is huge, naturally.
Yeah. Condition.
And, current trends play a role, too. Like, right now, those hip-hop cassette shirts from the 80s and early 90s, they're seeing a real surge in value. It's interesting because they represent this fixed moment, They can't make more original 1982 tour shirts. They're finite.
Finite assets.
Great.
That's a really interesting way to think about a t-shirt. Okay, but what if you love the look, but you don't have the time for the intense hunt or maybe the budget for a $10,000 Stones tee?
Yeah, fair enough. That's where high-quality reproductions come in. They're a fantastic alternative, honestly.
Reproductions, are they any good?
Some really are. Companies like Pixel Pulse Fashion, for example, they create retro T-shirts from the 80s that really nail the vintage spirit, but you get modern sizing that actually fits, it's consistent, and way more affordable.
Right, so you get the vibe without the headache or the price tag.
Exactly. It lets you play with that retro style, try different looks, maybe save your actual precious vintage pieces for special occasions, and wear the repro day to day. Nothing wrong with that.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, So wrapping this up, whether you're already a serious collector or maybe just starting to feel that pull towards the magic of past eras, we've really dug into how these tees are way more than just clothes. They're storied artifacts, those cultural timestamps you mentioned.
Yeah.
And hopefully you now have a better idea of what to look for, maybe where to start looking, and definitely how to rock them today.
Absolutely. And I think this whole deep dive, it really shows how the clothes we wear can be this powerful nod to cultural moments, to artistic expression. It kind of makes you think, doesn't it? If a simple piece of fabric can hold so much history, so much meaning.
How does wearing something with that kind of past maybe shift how you look at all the fast fashion, the trends right now? And maybe what other stories are just waiting to be found, hitting the folds of some old garment that's ready for its next chapter?